an ordained reverend. Let me repeat that again, an ordained reverend, which I have been since 2016. I have also been an itinerant preacher since 2007. And for those who may not know, I taught at a faith-based law school, the University of St. Thomas Law School, for 13 years, focused on faith, social justice, and the law. So my faith informs my activism. When you see me on the front lines, when you see me speaking truth to power, when you see me disrupting business as usual, that is the result of my faith and my belief in the gospel of Jesus Christ. My faith also played a primary role in organizing and co-organizing the demonstration that happened at City's Church last Sunday, the day before the official Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And we called it the Martin Luther King Jr. edition because our society commemorates Dr. King and his words, but most of the time, we do not repeat his actions, which had to do with disrupting the status quo, calling out our government, just like his Beyond Vietnam speech did, and made him one of the most hated men in America. So we have to understand that when you are fighting for racial justice, equality, and civil rights, there's a large contingency within our population that does not want to hear the truth, that specializes in distractions and gaslightings and threats. As a matter of fact, I want to read to you all an email that I received just today. It's one of many, but this is what a person wrote to me. You're very lucky I wasn't in church when you idiots came in. Good, speaking about Renee Good, deserves what she got, and you would have gotten the same, dumb bitch. So that's what someone wrote to me. And again, it's one of many emails that I have received from these MAGA supporters, from people who have a problem with the fact that we came into the church to confront an injustice, and do not have a problem with the fact that you have an ICE director, not just an ICE agent, as some people have said, but the director of the ICE field office in the state of Minnesota, also serving as a pastor at City's Church in St. Paul. Someone help me understand how it's possible to hold both roles with integrity, with honor, because the gospel that I believe in, the foundation, says that we are to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Now contrast that gospel message to what we have been seeing by ICE and the terrorism that they have engaged in on the streets of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and surrounding suburbs, and including outstate Minnesota, where they have literally kicked in people's doors. They have dragged people out of their homes. As a matter of fact, on Sunday, while we were in City's Church, one of the most egregious things that they did was brought out a Hmong elder wearing a robe and some pajama shorts, it looked like, and they wouldn't even let the man put on full clothing, knowing that we're dealing with freezing cold temperatures here in Minnesota. And they did the same to a Liberian immigrant by the name of Garrison in North Minneapolis, where they kicked in the man's door and came in with big guns and took him out. And then NPR reported that when he got to the detention facility, they took trophy photos with him, like he was a slave or an animal that they caught out in the wild. And he wasn't the only one that they did that to. So somebody tell me, how is it acceptable for David Easterwood to be a pastor when he is condoning this kind of conduct? And not just condoning it through his silence when it comes to addressing it publicly with our community, but the fact that he was referenced in the lawsuit that was filed by the ACLU in December on behalf of 6 residents, calling out the retaliatory and abusive tactics by ICE. And you know what David said in that lawsuit? There is no evidence that this is going on. It's the protesters and their aggression that's at fault. Well, think about what Rebecca Good said, the wife of Renee Good. They had guns, we had whistles. Mm-hmm. So you are talking about nonviolent, peaceful protesters with whistles, rocks, ice, and occasionally fireworks being compared to these thugs coming into our community with high-powered assault weapons, who have flashbang grenades, who have tear gas and green gas, being able to unleash these military-grade weapons upon our community. And instead of these issues being addressed, what do we get from the federal government? Threats of investigating those of us who were involved in a peaceful demonstration at City's Church. The same federal government that made up lies after the brutal murder of mother and wife Renee Good, falsely claiming that she was a domestic terrorist, falsely claiming that she tried to run over ICE agent Jonathan Ross. How dare they? And then putting out a statement that they're not going to investigate him on top of all of that. And what did the Vice President of the United States say, who is also a lawyer? That this man has total immunity, which is false under the law. So these people need to be called out and they need to be held accountable for continuing to assault the very people who are standing up for freedom, justice, and equality. This does not just affect immigrants. It's bad enough that it affects immigrants, but it also affects American citizens. And it doesn't matter whether they are adults or whether they are children. Think about the day that Renee Good was killed. That same day, ICE officers, federal officers went to Roosevelt High School and they assaulted young people, pepper sprayed them and physically assaulted them. And then they tackled one of their staff members in front of these kids. Think about the family of 8 that was driving in North Minneapolis on the day that the Venezuelan national was shot in the leg. On that day, as that family was driving, so a mother, a father, and 6 children, ICE agents unleashed military-grade munitions on that family's vehicle, causing a flashbang grenade to go under their car and tear gas to go into their car. 2 of their children had asthma and could not breathe. But even worse, a 6-month-old baby lost consciousness during that attack. A 6-month-old baby, an innocent baby, an innocent family, because of the lawlessness and the recklessness by ICE. Now think about that. And then you think about the board of City's Church. Instead of them saying, you know what, we made a mistake. David Easterwood should not have been allowed to continue to remain as a pastor on our roster at this church in light of all of the abuse and harm being levied by ICE, if they were true to the gospel that I just referenced. But instead, what did they do? Issue a statement calling protesters lawless. That's the kind of gaslighting that we're dealing with here. It's unconscionable and it's unacceptable while human lives are at stake. So today, we are calling for the resignation of so-called Pastor David Easterwood from City's Church. We are asking City's Church to operate in truth and integrity and the true meaning of the gospel, and to recognize that David Easterwood's dual role as a pastor and as the director of the ICE office is a most definite conflict of interest, and it cannot stand. Thank you.